In the spring of 1942, a technical file enters the registry of the Reich Ministry of Armaments bearing the designation Landkreuzer P.1000. The document specifies a tracked vehicle with an estimated mass of 1,000 metric tons. The listed armament consists of two 28-centimeter naval guns intended for shipborne use. The calculated length exceeds 30 meters. The width surpasses the clearance of standard European roads. The height is greater than that of most existing buildings assigned for armored vehicle assembly. The file includes engine requirements normally associated with submarines. Fuel consumption tables assume continuous supply under combat conditions. Bridge load classifications referenced in the margins do not correspond to any existing military infrastructure charts. Rail transport sections are left incomplete. Crew numbers exceed those of operational tanks by several multiples. The project classification places the vehicle among armored fighting vehicles, yet its proposed dimensions align with coastal artillery platforms. The designation assigns it to land forces, while its primary armament originates from naval inventories. Production estimates reference steel allocations already committed elsewhere. Test range requirements are listed without location. The document carries the required signatures and approval marks. It is entered into circulation through the established administrative chain. No marginal notes indicate rejection or suspension. The designation remains unchanged throughout the routing process. Subsequent registry entries continue under the same project number. In the first months of 1941, German armored development proceeded under directives issued through the Heereswaffenamt and the Reich Ministry of Armaments, with parallel conceptual work conducted by industrial firms engaged in heavy weapons production. The existing classification of armored fighting vehicles included light, medium, and heavy tanks, assault guns, and specialized engineering vehicles. Design offices within Krupp, Henschel, Porsche, and other firms continued studies concerning armor thickness, gun calibers, propulsion systems, and load-bearing capacity of tracked chassis. These activities were conducted in the context of ongoing operations on the European continent and increasing requirements communicated by the Army High Command for vehicles capable of surviving concentrated artillery fire and engaging fortified targets. By mid-1941, reports from the Eastern Front described engagements against fortified defensive belts, reinforced concrete structures, and massed artillery positions. Field reports transmitted through Army Group Headquarters documented losses among armored units operating within limited maneuver space and under fire from heavy-caliber weapons. The requirement for increased frontal armor protection and heavier main armament was reflected in correspondence between the Army Ordnance Office and industrial partners. Concurrently, naval artillery programs faced restrictions imposed by international treaties that no longer held practical relevance under wartime conditions, leaving certain production capacities and design expertise available for reassignment. In early 1942, within the design offices of Friedrich Krupp AG in Essen, a proposal was prepared that extended existing concepts of heavy armored vehicles beyond the scale previously examined. The internal designation Landkreuzer P.1000 referred to a projected tracked armored platform with a combat weight in excess of 1,000 metric tons. The proposal outlined the installation of a naval gun turret mounting two 28 cm SKC/34 guns, identical in type to those installed on the battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. Supporting documentation included preliminary calculations concerning recoil absorption, turret ring diameter, and ammunition handling systems adapted from naval practice. The proposal indicated an overall length exceeding 30 meters, with a width surpassing 14 meters when accounting for the full span of the track assemblies. The height of the vehicle, inclusive of turret and range-finding equipment, exceeded 11 meters. Armor thickness values listed in the proposal specified frontal armor exceeding 300 mm in certain sections, with side and rear armor proportionally reduced. The crew complement was estimated at more than 20 personnel, distributed among command, gunnery, engineering, communications, and internal security functions. The propulsion concept described in the proposal relied upon multiple marine diesel engines, specifically MAN V-12 U-boat engines, coupled through a transmission system adapted to distribute power to several track units on each side. Calculations included fuel consumption rates based on continuous operation at low speeds. The estimated maximum speed on level terrain did not exceed 40 km per hour under ideal conditions, with operational speeds expected to be significantly lower. Steering was to be achieved through differential control of track groups, with hydraulic assistance systems specified in the draft. In March 1942, the proposal was submitted through internal industrial channels to the Reich Ministry of Armaments and War Production. The documentation was reviewed by technical officers assigned to armored vehicle development. Notes appended to the proposal raised questions regarding rail transport, bridge crossing capacity, and ground pressure values. The calculated ground pressure exceeded that of existing heavy tanks, even when accounting for the wide track assembly specified. The proposal addressed these concerns by suggesting movement primarily across open terrain and the construction of dedicated routes where required. By April 1942, the project had come to the attention of Albert Speer in his capacity as Reich Minister of Armaments. Speer's office received briefing materials outlining the technical characteristics of the proposed Landkreuzer. Internal memoranda recorded discussions concerning allocation of steel, manufacturing time, and industrial labor. At this time, German industry was engaged in the production of multiple tank types, artillery systems, aircraft, submarines, and munitions, with resource allocation subject to central coordination. The Landkreuzer proposal included auxiliary armament consisting of multiple 128 mm and 15 mm weapons for close defense, as well as anti-aircraft guns mounted on elevated platforms. Ammunition stowage calculations listed quantities for each weapon type, with resupply operations assumed to be conducted by specialized support vehicles. Communications equipment specified included long-range radio transmitters and receivers comparable to those installed in command tanks, with redundancy systems to maintain contact under combat conditions. Engineering diagrams attached to the proposal illustrated internal compartmentalization, including engine rooms, generator compartments, crew quarters, and ammunition magazines. Ventilation requirements were addressed through forced air circulation systems, drawing upon naval design experience. Fire suppression systems were specified in engine and ammunition compartments, with manual and automatic activation mechanisms. During the summer of 1942, technical assessments were conducted within the Armaments Ministry to determine feasibility within existing industrial constraints. Reports circulated among departments responsible for steel allocation indicated that the production of a single vehicle would require quantities of armor plate equivalent to those allocated to multiple heavy tanks. Transportation departments provided input concerning the limitations of rail gauges, road widths, and bridge load ratings across occupied territories. Parallel to these assessments, the German Army continued operations requiring rapid deployment of armored formations. Field commanders submitted requests emphasizing reliability, ease of maintenance, and logistical support. These requests were documented in operational summaries and transmitted through established command channels. The contrast between field requirements and the scale of the Landkreuzer proposal was noted in internal correspondence, without formal conclusions recorded at this stage. In August 1942, a revised technical outline was prepared by Krupp engineers addressing some of the logistical concerns previously raised. This revision proposed partial disassembly of external components for transport, as well as the use of specially constructed transport routes. Additional calculations refined estimates of fuel consumption, indicating that sustained operations would require continuous logistical support involving tanker vehicles operating in proximity to the Landkreuzer. The proposal also addressed crew training requirements, suggesting that personnel be drawn from naval artillery units and armored forces, with specialized instruction in the operation of combined systems. Training facilities were proposed to be established near manufacturing sites to familiarize crews with the vehicle's systems prior to deployment. Throughout late 1942, the project remained under review without authorization for prototype construction. Correspondence between the Armaments Ministry and Krupp referenced the need to prioritize projects already approved for mass production. Minutes from internal meetings recorded concerns regarding vulnerability to air attack due to the vehicle's size and limited concealment options. These concerns were listed alongside other technical considerations without evaluative language. In January 1943, the Armaments Ministry conducted a broader review of ongoing and proposed weapons projects. Documentation from this review included lists of projects recommended for continuation, modification, or termination. The Landkreuzer P.1000 appeared in these lists as a conceptual study without allocated production resources. Notes appended to the entry referenced unresolved issues concerning mobility, infrastructure impact, and resource consumption. During this period, Allied air operations against industrial centers intensified, leading to damage assessments and production disruptions documented in ministry reports. Steel production figures and delivery schedules were adjusted accordingly. These factors influenced ongoing discussions regarding allocation of materials to various weapons programs. In February 1943, Speer issued directives emphasizing concentration on weapon systems capable of near-term deployment. Internal memoranda circulated to industrial partners communicated the necessity of focusing engineering resources on projects with immediate operational applicability. The Landkreuzer proposal was referenced in this context as a study without active development orders. Subsequent correspondence between Krupp and the Armaments Ministry acknowledged receipt of these directives. Krupp engineers were instructed to retain design documentation and calculations within company archives. No contracts for prototype construction were issued, and no manufacturing facilities were assigned to the project. By the spring of 1943, attention within armored vehicle development shifted toward incremental improvements of existing tank models. Technical bulletins addressed armor quality, engine reliability, and gun performance based on field feedback. The Landkreuzer P.1000 remained documented solely within design studies and ministerial files. Records from mid-1943 indicate that the project was formally noted as discontinued in internal listings of proposed weapons systems. This notation did not include descriptive commentary, only a change in project status. Design drawings, memoranda, and correspondence remained preserved within archival holdings of Krupp and the Armaments Ministry. No physical components associated with the Landkreuzer P.1000 were produced. No test tracks were constructed, and no crews were assigned. The project existed as a set of documented concepts, calculations, and administrative records generated during the period of its consideration. The documentation reflects the procedural handling of the proposal within the German wartime industrial and military administrative structure. Entries record dates of submission, review, revision, and termination, with signatures of responsible officials affixed where required. These records conclude the documented activity related to the Landkreuzer P.1000 during the wartime period covered by surviving files. Following the internal notation recorded in mid-1943, administrative handling of the Landkreuzer P.1000 documentation continued in accordance with standard archival procedures of the German armament system. Design materials remained classified under existing security regulations. Copies of technical drawings, memoranda, and calculation tables were stored within Krupp's engineering archives in Essen and referenced within the Armaments Ministry's centralized project index. Access to these materials was limited to authorized personnel assigned to heavy weapons development. Throughout 1943, Krupp engineers continued routine duties related to approved production programs, including artillery pieces, armored vehicle components, and naval armament. Engineering staff previously involved in conceptual studies of oversized armored platforms were reassigned to projects with active production schedules. Time allocation sheets and departmental records indicate that no further man-hours were formally charged to the Landkreuzer P.1000 designation after the discontinuation notation was entered. Within the Armaments Ministry, the Department for Armored Fighting Vehicles maintained periodic reviews of dormant and cancelled projects. These reviews served administrative purposes, ensuring that obsolete project numbers were not inadvertently reactivated. The Landkreuzer P.1000 designation remained listed under cancelled conceptual studies. No follow-on directives, amendments, or reclassification orders were issued during the remainder of 1943. During the same period, German military planners continued to receive operational reports from multiple fronts. These reports detailed engagements involving heavy armor, artillery concentrations, and fortified positions. Summaries compiled by the General Staff recorded logistical constraints, including fuel availability, transport limitations, and repair capacity. These summaries formed part of the routine informational flow within the High Command but did not reference the Landkreuzer project directly. Industrial correspondence from late 1943 reflects increasing emphasis on dispersal of production facilities and reduction of vulnerable large-scale manufacturing sites. Factory layouts were altered, and equipment was relocated where feasible. This process affected all industrial partners engaged in armaments production. No facility modifications were proposed or undertaken in connection with the Landkreuzer P.1000, as no production authorization existed. Within Krupp's Naval Artillery Division, ongoing work continued on maintenance, refurbishment, and limited production of existing naval guns and components. Documentation from this division included inventories of completed barrels, spare parts, and tooling. The twin 28 cm turret concept associated with the Landkreuzer remained referenced only within the original proposal documentation. No turret components were reassigned or modified for land-based application under this designation. By early 1944, the Armaments Ministry initiated a consolidation of project files to account for losses resulting from air raids and administrative relocation. File inventories were cross-checked against master lists. The Landkreuzer P.1000 files were confirmed intact at that time. Marginal notes indicate verification of completeness rather than any intent to resume activity. During this period, Allied intelligence assessments increasingly focused on German armored vehicle development. Captured documents and prisoner interrogations provided information regarding heavy tank projects under active development. No references to the Landkreuzer P.1000 appeared in these intelligence summaries, as the project had not progressed beyond internal design studies and had not entered production or testing phases. German internal security regulations required periodic reassessment of classified material. In mid-1944, security officers conducted reviews of stored design documentation to ensure compliance with handling procedures. Records indicate that the Landkreuzer files remained classified and secured. No orders were issued to destroy or declassify the materials during wartime. As military conditions evolved in 1944, the Armaments Ministry issued additional directives prioritizing repair, refurbishment, and simplified production models. Engineering change orders focused on reducing material usage and manufacturing complexity. These directives applied to active projects only. The Landkreuzer P.1000 was not included in any modification lists or simplification efforts. Within Krupp's administrative records, the project number associated with the Landkreuzer remained dormant. Accounting ledgers show no expenditures charged against it beyond the initial design phase. Personnel rosters list no active project teams assigned to it during this period. The absence of further documentation entries indicates administrative closure without physical realization. In the latter half of 1944, as German forces faced increasing material shortages, armaments production increasingly relied on standardized components and existing designs. Technical circulars distributed to manufacturers emphasized interchangeability and rapid assembly. No large-scale experimental platforms were authorized under these conditions. By early 1945, Allied forces advanced into industrial regions previously under German control. As evacuation and relocation orders were issued, selected technical documents were moved or destroyed according to standing regulations. Surviving inventories suggest that a portion of Krupp's design archives, including conceptual studies, were preserved and later captured intact. The Landkreuzer P.1000 documentation is listed among materials recovered by Allied technical intelligence units. Following the cessation of organized German resistance, Allied teams conducted systematic examinations of captured industrial sites and archives. Technical intelligence reports catalogued various German weapons projects, including those that had not reached production. The Landkreuzer P.1000 appeared in these catalogues as a conceptual heavy armored vehicle study. Allied reports reproduced technical specifications as recorded in original German documents without commentary. These Allied technical reports included summaries of dimensions, armament, propulsion concepts, and estimated crew size. Diagrams and tables were appended where available. The reports noted the absence of prototypes or physical components. They recorded the project's administrative status at the time of capture based on German files. Captured Krupp engineers and technical staff provided factual explanations of the documentation upon request. Interrogation transcripts record descriptions of the proposal's origin, intended configuration, and administrative handling. Statements confine themselves to technical and procedural facts. No testimony indicated that construction had commenced or that manufacturing facilities had been prepared. The documentation gathered by Allied intelligence was distributed among technical evaluation centers. Copies were forwarded to military research establishments for reference. These materials were classified according to Allied regulations and stored alongside other captured German weapons documentation. During the immediate post-capture period, Allied evaluators focused on assessing existing and emerging threats. Projects that had not advanced beyond paper studies were recorded for completeness. The Landkreuzer P.1000 was included in these records as an example of German conceptual exploration of extreme armored vehicle scales. Within these Allied records, terminology varied, with translations of the original German designation appearing alongside descriptive phrases referencing its size and intended role. The content of the records remained descriptive, listing specifications and administrative history as derived from captured documents. No directives were issued by Allied authorities to pursue further study or development of the Landkreuzer concept. The documentation remained static within archival collections. Subsequent administrative actions concerned cataloging, indexing, and storage. By mid-1945, the process of consolidating captured German technical documentation continued. Central repositories were established, and materials were transferred accordingly. Inventory lists from these repositories confirm the presence of Landkreuzer P.1000 files among the collected German armaments documentation. Throughout this process, the original German records retained their internal structure, including dates, reference numbers, and signatures. Allied archivists preserved these features to maintain the integrity of the materials. No annotations altering the content were added during wartime handling. The surviving documentation from the Landkreuzer P.1000 project consists of design proposals, internal correspondence, technical calculations, and administrative notes spanning the period from early 1942 to mid-1943. These materials reflect the procedural progression of a conceptual weapons project within the German wartime armament system, from initial proposal through review and administrative termination. No additional wartime records indicate any revival or reconsideration of the project after its discontinuation. The archival trail ends with the recorded status change and subsequent storage of materials. This concludes the documented sequence of events related to the Landkreuzer P.1000 during the period covered by surviving wartime and immediate post-capture records. Following the consolidation of captured German armaments documentation into Allied-controlled repositories during 1945, the handling of the Landkreuzer P.1000 materials proceeded under established military archival procedures. Technical files originating from Krupp and the Reich Ministry of Armaments were sorted according to weapon category, project designation, and administrative status. The Landkreuzer documentation was grouped with other heavy armored vehicle studies and assigned reference numbers corresponding to its original German project identifiers. Allied technical intelligence units responsible for armored warfare analysis reviewed captured materials as part of a systematic survey of German design practices. Review memoranda noted the existence of multiple German conceptual projects exceeding the scale of vehicles that had entered service. The Landkreuzer P.1000 was listed among these projects with its specifications transcribed directly from German source documents. The memoranda recorded dimensions, estimated weight, armament configuration, propulsion concepts, and crew requirements without supplementary analysis. Engineering drawings associated with the project were examined for completeness and accuracy of reproduction. These drawings included plan views, elevation views, and cross-sectional diagrams showing internal compartmentalization. Annotations present on the original drawings, including measurement units, material designations, and reference numbers, were preserved in copied versions. Allied reproduction processes retained original German terminology where feasible, with translated captions added separately. Technical intelligence summaries compiled in late 1945 categorized the Landkreuzer P.1000 as a conceptual armored vehicle project with no evidence of prototype construction. These summaries referenced captured factory records confirming the absence of production orders, tooling assignments, or procurement contracts. Inventory lists of machine tools and fabrication equipment at Krupp facilities showed no entries associated with manufacturing components of the Landkreuzer scale. Interrogation records of German industrial personnel conducted by Allied authorities included routine questions concerning large-scale weapons projects. Statements attributed to Krupp engineers described the Landkreuzer as a design study initiated internally and later submitted to the Armaments Ministry. The accounts detailed the sequence of proposal submission, technical review, and administrative discontinuation. These statements did not include references to test fabrication, material stockpiling, or construction scheduling. During the same period, Allied armored vehicle specialists compared captured German studies with their own ongoing research programs. Internal comparison charts listed vehicle weight classes, armor thickness ranges, and main gun calibers. The Landkreuzer P.1000 was included as an outlier due to its projected mass and dimensions. The charts recorded numerical data without evaluative commentary. The archival handling of the Landkreuzer materials continued through 1946 as responsibility for captured documents transitioned from military intelligence units to permanent archival institutions. Transfer logs documented the movement of files from temporary storage facilities to central archives. The Landkreuzer files were assigned storage locations alongside other German armored vehicle projects. Within these archives, catalog entries described the contents of each file folder. Entries for the Landkreuzer P.1000 listed design proposals dated 1942, internal correspondence between Krupp and the Armaments Ministry, technical calculation sheets, and project status notes indicating discontinuation. No additional documents dated after mid-1943 were present. In parallel, Allied technical publications prepared for internal distribution summarized German wartime weapons development. These publications included sections on armored vehicles, artillery, naval weapons, and experimental projects. The Landkreuzer P.1000 appeared in appendices listing conceptual projects. Descriptions remained confined to technical specifications and administrative history as recorded in captured documents. No evidence was recorded of field trials, range testing, or structural mock-ups related to the Landkreuzer project. Test facility logs examined by Allied teams showed no allocation of test ranges, proving grounds, or engineering test beds to a vehicle of this scale. Transportation planning records likewise contain no entries indicating movement preparations for such a vehicle. During the immediate post-war years, German industrial firms underwent restructuring under Allied supervision. Krupp facilities were inspected, inventoried, and in some cases dismantled. Inspection reports covering design offices and archives noted the presence of historical project files. The Landkreuzer documentation remained classified within these records as a discontinued wartime project. As part of denazification and industrial review processes, German engineers were required to provide written accounts of their wartime activities. Some of these accounts referenced involvement in conceptual studies of heavy armored vehicles. Where mentioned, the Landkreuzer P.1000 was described as an unbuilt design study conducted within standard engineering workflows. These accounts aligned with previously captured documentation. Academic and military research institutions granted access to captured German technical materials for study under controlled conditions. Access logs from archival repositories show requests for armored vehicle design files. The Landkreuzer files were occasionally consulted alongside other heavy tank projects. Notes taken by researchers focused on technical data rather than narrative interpretation. Throughout the late 1940s, cataloging efforts continued to standardize references to captured German weapons projects. Indexing systems assigned consistent titles and cross-references. The Landkreuzer P.1000 appeared under multiple headings, including Heavy Armored Vehicle Concepts and Land Battleship Studies. Cross-references linked the project to naval gun documentation due to the proposed armament. Photographic records associated with the Landkreuzer project consisted solely of reproduced drawings and document pages. No photographs of physical components existed. Archival descriptions explicitly noted the absence of physical artifacts related to the project. As Allied nations developed their own post-war armored vehicle programs, historical German studies were retained as reference material. Internal memoranda within research establishments listed German conceptual projects reviewed for awareness. The Landkreuzer P.1000 was included among these listings with its specifications summarized. By the early 1950s, responsibility for long-term preservation of captured German military archives was transferred to national archival institutions. Formal accession records list the Landkreuzer P.1000 documentation among the transferred materials. Preservation measures included microfilming and controlled storage environments. Within these archives, the Landkreuzer files retained their original order and content. Archivists maintained the integrity of the documents, refraining from alteration. Finding aids prepared for researchers described the project in neutral terms, reflecting the language of the original documents. No subsequent additions to the archival record indicate any post-war German or Allied attempt to revive or further develop the Landkreuzer concept. The documentation remained static, representing a closed set of wartime records. In military education contexts, captured German armored vehicle studies were occasionally referenced as examples of wartime engineering exploration. Course materials summarized various projects, including those not realized. The Landkreuzer P.1000 appeared in these materials as a design study, with emphasis on recorded specifications and administrative handling. Throughout these uses, the portrayal of the Landkreuzer remained consistent with the captured documentation. No speculative elements were introduced into official records. The project was consistently described as a conceptual proposal that did not advance beyond the design stage. The continuity of documentation from initial proposal through archival preservation reflects the administrative processes governing wartime weapons development and post-war intelligence handling. The Landkreuzer P.1000 exists within the historical record as a documented concept preserved through these processes. By the mid-20th century, the Landkreuzer P.1000 documentation had become part of established archival collections accessible to authorized researchers. The records continue to present the same sequence of events, technical descriptions, and administrative notes as originally recorded during the wartime period. The surviving documentation provides a complete account of the project's existence within the constraints of available records, encompassing its proposal, review, discontinuation, and subsequent archival preservation. By the time archival responsibility for captured German technical documentation was fully transferred to permanent institutions, the Landkreuzer P.1000 records had been incorporated into standardized archival systems. These systems were organized to preserve original document order, reference numbering, and provenance. The Landkreuzer files were catalogued under German armored vehicle development projects of the wartime period, with cross-references to naval artillery documentation due to the proposed armament configuration. Archival inventories compiled during this phase listed the Landkreuzer P.1000 materials as consisting exclusively of paper documentation. The inventory specified the number of folders, approximate page counts, and document types. Included were original design proposals, engineering sketches, internal memoranda, calculation sheets, and administrative status notes. No physical samples, scale models, or manufacturing tooling associated with the project were recorded. During ongoing archival processing, documents were examined for preservation needs. Paper condition assessments were conducted, and conservation measures applied where necessary. These measures included stabilization of fragile pages, removal of corrosive fasteners, and controlled storage. The content of the documents was not altered. German-language originals were retained, with translated finding aids prepared separately for non-German-speaking researchers. In parallel with archival consolidation, military historical offices within Allied nations compiled reference works summarizing captured enemy material and design efforts. These reference works were intended for internal use and training purposes. The Landkreuzer P.1000 appeared within these compilations as an entry describing a proposed heavy armored vehicle. Entries listed numerical specifications, weapon types, and administrative status. The language mirrored that of the captured German documents. Within these reference works, the Landkreuzer was not assigned an operational history, as none existed. The absence of production records, test reports, or deployment orders was noted through omission rather than commentary. The project was presented alongside other discontinued or unrealized studies in tabular or appendix form. As post-war military research establishments evaluated foreign technology, captured German documents were periodically reviewed to inform general understanding of wartime engineering approaches. Review logs from these establishments indicate that the Landkreuzer P.1000 files were accessed intermittently. Researchers recorded data points such as armor thickness, gun caliber, engine type, and estimated weight. Notes taken during these reviews remained confined to factual extraction. No evidence appears in institutional correspondence of any attempt to adapt or directly apply the Landkreuzer design to post-war vehicle development programs. Where German heavy tank projects that had reached prototype or production stages were examined in greater depth, conceptual studies without physical realization received proportionally limited attention. Over subsequent decades, the Landkreuzer P.1000 documentation remained within controlled archival access. Requests for consultation were logged, and materials were issued under supervision. The handling procedures emphasized preservation and accurate reproduction. Microfilm and, later, photographic copies were produced to reduce handling of original documents. As historical interest in World War II technology persisted, published works occasionally referenced the Landkreuzer P.1000 based on archival material. In these contexts, the information presented derived from the same captured documents. Archival records do not indicate the creation of new primary sources related to the project beyond the wartime materials. Within archival descriptions, the project title appeared in its original German form, sometimes accompanied by translated descriptors indicating its nature as a land-based armored platform of exceptional size. These descriptors reflected terminology used in the original proposal documents. No standardized alternative designation was assigned beyond existing references. The administrative record associated with the Landkreuzer P.1000 remains closed with the final wartime status notation indicating discontinuation. No subsequent German governmental or industrial records document further action. Post-war German industrial archives retained copies of pre-1945 documentation where available, aligning with captured records held elsewhere. Comparative archival studies conducted by historians and archivists confirmed consistency across surviving document sets. Cross-checks between Allied-held archives and German industrial archives revealed matching content, dates, and reference numbers. Discrepancies were limited to minor administrative annotations added during post-war cataloging. Throughout this period, the Landkreuzer P.1000 continued to exist within the historical records solely as documented evidence of a proposed weapons system. The absence of physical artifacts, operational orders, or production infrastructure remained a defining characteristic of the project's archival footprint. In military museums and exhibitions addressing armored warfare, references to unrealized projects were sometimes included for completeness. Where the Landkreuzer P.1000 was mentioned, exhibits relied on reproduced drawings and summarized specifications. Exhibition records indicate that curatorial descriptions adhered closely to archival data. Educational materials developed for military academies and technical institutions occasionally incorporated examples of wartime engineering studies. In such materials, the Landkreuzer P.1000 was cited as a documented design proposal. The materials presented numerical and descriptive data without extrapolation beyond recorded information. As digitization initiatives expanded in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, portions of archival collections were converted to digital formats. The Landkreuzer P.1000 documents were included in these efforts where resources permitted. Digital copies reproduced original documents faithfully, preserving layout, annotations, and stamps. Digital catalog entries associated with these copies maintained the same descriptive framework established in earlier finding aids. Metadata fields included project designation, date range, originating institution, and document type. No interpretive summaries were added to the digital records. Researchers accessing digital or physical copies continued to encounter the Landkreuzer P.1000 as a closed wartime project. Citations in scholarly works referencing the project consistently traced back to the same primary documents generated between 1942 and 1943. No additional wartime correspondence, diaries, or personal papers discovered in later years have expanded the factual record of the Landkreuzer project. The known documentation set remains finite. Archival notes indicate periodic verification of completeness against known inventories. Within the broader context of German wartime armaments administration, the Landkreuzer P.1000 documentation illustrates standard procedural handling of a proposed project. The sequence of proposal submission, technical review, administrative consideration, and termination is recorded through dated documents and internal memoranda. The preservation of these records through wartime conditions, post-war capture, and long-term archival management has maintained an unbroken chain of documentation. This chain allows the project to be traced from its initial conception within an industrial design office to its final status as an archived study. At no point within the surviving documentation is there evidence of deviation from established administrative processes. All recorded actions align with known procedures governing weapons development proposals within the German wartime system. The Landkreuzer P.1000 remains documented as a theoretical armored vehicle project defined by its recorded specifications and administrative history. The archival materials present a complete account within the limits of existing records, without indication of further development, realization, or operational use. The documentation continues to be preserved within archival collections, accessible to authorized users, and presented in the form in which it was originally created. The records stand as a factual account of a proposed weapons system as documented at the time of its consideration.